Hello everyone, it's Clown Decade, etc, etc. Left-wingers have been going absolutely mad recently because of the recent spring statement on the budget, and it looks like Labour are doing what everyone said the Tories have been doing for the past decades or so, which is actually making some direct spending cuts. The thing is that they are direct cuts, but not to the thing that everyone's protesting about. I am specifically going to be talking about PIP and how it is frozen and now harder to get for some people because, to be quite honest with you, I've had some experience with PIP in the recent past, and while it is a complete lottery how easy or hard it is to get, there are definitely people on it who frankly shouldn't be. Anyway, there are people who are on it and should be on it, there are people who are on it and shouldn't be on it, and there are a lot of people who went out to try and protest this change to the way the benefits work. So let's see what they have to say.
What work am I going to do? I've been declared not able to work.
I mean, straight out of the gate, you can understand why someone like this is on PIP. Absolutely no arms. It's understandable why it's been declared that she is not able to work. And so, given that, according to the government, it's her one source of income, along with incapacity benefits, you would imagine, which haven't been cut, of course she's going to go out and protest and demand more. I understand the incentives, however, at the same time, it's something I'm going to constantly bring up is just at the back of my mind. It's always going to be there. You just know that these are the types of people who effectively rely on taxpayers who have no choice but to give into the system. Now, to be absolutely fair, most taxpayers are okay giving this sort of woman money, but there's probably going to be a lot of people who are getting their money and they don't want to have it.
When they tell you that benefit spending is spiralling, they are lying.
Well, that's not true at all. Welfare spending is the highest spending currently going on in the public sector. And to be fair, that's mainly because it includes the state pension. However, you can't have welfare being the largest bill in the public purse and say it's not spiralling. I mean, you just look at this graph, it's clearly going up. And with my experience when it comes to looking at graphs like this, they typically undersell the actual projections. So this is clearly spiralling out of control. We now have more people under the age of 40 on out of work, on benefits, I think. It might be out of work, I can't remember, than people between the ages of 50 and 65. It's not sustainable.
On what planet does cutting that support and taking away what social security we have, security being the key word, drive us into work?
Well, as someone who's never been on benefits, for your basic need, you're going to need to pay for things. If you want a better life, protesting for more money isn't going to go anywhere, so you get a job. It's that simple.
I am here because the government are trying to put through on the Green Paper cuts to PIP and welfare benefits for deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people.
Yeah, that's all people are really out for. More money for, well, in some cases because their opportunities in life are genuinely limited. Other people because the doctors have given them a label and gone for PIP. And again, the incentives make sense. I complain, I get more money. Why wouldn't you do it?
I mean, the government is arguing that by freezing PIP, and now they're going to freeze the universal credit and capacity payment as well, they're saying that this will encourage people to get into work. What do you make of that argument?
This is the other thing I can't help but keep in the front of my mind. It's only a pay freeze. All that's happening is it's not going up in line with inflation, but they're still getting the same amount of money. And I think it's only a freeze for a couple of years, but there's an argument to be made that they've been overpaid for some years.
Another thing people don't realise is just being disabled uses so much extra energy.
Well, it depends on the disability. There are people I know who have autism who basically have extra energy for work and being productive and things like that. I think a problem a lot of people are going to run into when it comes to being interviewed here is that clearly you'll have women like this who have no arms and can't work, and it's perfectly reasonable she's getting PIP. But then like the guy before who had pretty decent, well-built arms and was in a wheelchair, and I'm not being funny, but an awful lot of jobs these days are effectively desk jobs, and being in a wheelchair doesn't really put you out of those jobs at all. And also there's a lot of work from home options these days as well. You know, it's not like we're in the 1800s when most jobs were manual labour. We're kind of past that now.
You know, I'm walking with two prosthetic legs. I have to think about my balance and my core all the time.
As I said before, this woman will be on incapacity benefits and PIP. It's reasonable that she's getting benefits. But as I say, this is an extreme example when something like autism seems to get you a pretty good success rate for PIP, and not only that, but 60% of autistic people qualify for a mobility car if they're on PIP, which to most people just seems quite absurd. The mobility cars are a completely different issue here, but it does always seem odd that a lot of people who get mobility cars don't even need them modified, when the whole point of them is that they are for disabled people. And so you would think they need to be modified, but there you go. But it's statistics like this that put people off supporting PIP, because, as I say, this woman, nobody really would have an issue with saying, yeah, she should be on PIP. But you see it all over TikTok, and Max Tempers absolutely does the legwork for collating all of this together, where you have people showing off that they are getting a government-funded car when, frankly, they seem well in their TikTok profiles. It seems like people are taking the mickey is the point. Which, yeah, this then gets taken out on people who genuinely need it, and they feel stifled by it, and that's probably fair.
The Labour government's supposed to be the government that looks out for the most vulnerable in society. I do not understand how they can be cutting things for the most vulnerable.
Oh, that one's really easy. We've had fake growth for about 30 years. That's basically it. We've had fake growth for at least 2 decades. Everything in the Blair government was based on debt, then you had a massive crash to try and equalise that, and we've had fake growth since then as well. Most of the growth we've had in GDP terms all basically comes from the fact we've had massive amounts of immigration. You look at the GDP per capita, it's basically stagnant. And so when you've had completely fake growth that whole time, and you end up with inflation, making all money about 3/4 of its worth over 4 years thanks to the response to COVID, yes, some things are going to have to be cut. You can only afford these types of benefits that are relatively luxurious. I mean, people are getting free cars, by the way. Not technically free. They come out of their already existing benefits, as they always say. But these are pretty luxurious, and they can only happen if you have a relatively productive country, and productivity's basically been stagnant for quite a while, even in the private sector. Though it's only in the private sector where it tends to rise. Public sector productivity has actually gone down, by the way, and at least Labour are trying to cut that now. But again, it's being reacted to with rather visceral plans from unions, planning strikes and things like that. So I don't think this Labour government's going to improve anything. I think they've already ruined their chance to do that. Growth has been halved, for God's sake, already. It's not good.
My father-in-law, he starved to death after his benefits were cut. The system not having a duty of care meant that the system didn't have to care. It could just take his money without any consideration as to whether he was suffering in that flat.
Yeah, I remember this story, actually. It was about 5 years ago. No, 7 years ago now. And it was basically put on the DWP that they had a duty of care to effectively contact this man because he was mentally ill. But the DWP officials made 2 visits to his home in 2017 and a handful of attempts to communicate with him by phone, but they'd never made contact, and so they cut his benefits, because part of the benefits system is that you have to go through review processes. And the thing that's never really asked here is, okay, your father-in-law here starved to death. Were you doing welfare checks on him? Was anyone in the family doing welfare checks to him? It takes a while to starve to death. And I'm not sure if the family then appealed, but the judge effectively ruled that the DWP guidance was fine, because they went to his house personally twice, and then they tried to contact him by phone a few times. And realistically, it might sound harsh to people, but seriously, the man was found by police. The family didn't find him, the police found him. So, as much as we say it's the DWP's fault, where was the family, and why is there no onus on them to check on him and see if he's okay? Especially if he's mentally ill like this. Again, I've had people in my family who are mentally ill, and they are cared for constantly by the family. They don't push it onto anyone else. I think it's actually quite unreasonable to say that the DWP should be looking after people to that extent when it's clearly not within their remit. But then this is the issue with this argument. Oh, cutting benefits makes people starve to death. That's the story. And, well, quite clearly there's more to this story than that.
Where he was, the system made the assumption that he started a job. Severe mental health, psychosis, and they assumed he started a job.
I can't find any information on the DWP saying that they assumed he should have started a job, but if they're not managing to get in contact with him, there's a number of assumptions that can be made. At the end of the day, the DWP's job is to just let someone know that they need to go through a review process. They tried multiple times on the phone and twice by knocking on his door. This was while he was getting benefits, by the way. And then he had to be found by police officers rather than the family. Again, I have massive questions over this as to why the family let him get into that state in the first place. It's ridiculous to try and say you don't have any responsibility over him.
Can you tell us about some of those deaths that have been linked to past welfare cuts like austerity?
Yeah, well, I mean, there've been countless deaths over the years, particularly in the post-2010 years.
I've gone through this numerous times on this channel by now, but overall spending in real terms was pretty flat during the Osborne-Cameron years, to the point where people who say austerity means budget cuts just don't listen to them. However, to be fair, the way it did work was they would rearrange money because their main point was to try and keep the NHS funded, which meant taking money from elsewhere to put it into the NHS. And all these people think, oh, it's just a political choice, they just want us to die. When in reality, you just cannot have a welfare system when you have a whole bunch of migrants coming in who can benefit off it as well, and also productive people all start leaving because you start taxing them up to the eyeballs. It's not a political decision, it's just reality. You can only work within your means, and successive governments for 20 years at this point have been doing their best to encourage unproductivity and discourage productivity, and this is the result of it. So the thing is, you can try and blame Tories for that all you want. The thing is that these Labour voters, they all wanted that but worse, which is what we have now.
Some awful deaths connected with the austerity years, but dating back really like 30 years as well. And
well, through all that period of fake growth, colour me shocked.
People have taken their own lives. In connection with PIP, with past reforms and cuts to PIP, and also the awful work capability assessment.
I will say that, to be fair, the public sector does have an awful track record of saying people are fit to work when they're not. There is evidence of that I think either Max Tempest or Camillo went through on Twitter. So it's not like it's all sided towards people are getting PIP when they shouldn't, but that is very much going to annoy people when they are the taxpayer and having to pay for it.
And I'm going to be reporting tomorrow on the latest death of, it's an awful, tragic case of a man on PIP who had his PIP removed in January this year because he was too ill to return his PIP form, and he died in a state of awful squalor and destitution after DWP removed his cuts, and I'm sure many other people will feel that is something that's going to happen.
Well, once again, it has to be asked. Again, I have experience in this. Why was no one helping him? It's not unusual to make during the PIP process to get help for it. And in fact, the main way people get help is through Facebook forums and TikTok posts, effectively coaching people on how to get the most PIP. And yeah, there's gonna be people like this, but the question always has to be asked, where's the people within the family there to help him? And they might not have any, and that's fair enough. There are people like this who are gonna fall through the cracks, sure. But the assumption that this is all purely a responsibility of the government and Department of Work and Pensions, I think is rather unfair. And if we do really believe that, guess what? The budget for that's going to have to go up even more. And guess what? Reality says that's just not affordable.
New cuts to PIP, I won't qualify anymore probably, and many of my friends who are in significantly even more need than me, who can't work, will also be in a significantly worse situation.
They're changing.
So you're there because you probably won't qualify for PIP anymore. Again, I can understand the incentives, but in that case, get a job. Your friends in a worse situation probably will qualify for PIP and will be getting the same money as before, so what's the issue?
So at the moment, you have to get a certain amount of points to qualify, but you don't need to get a certain amount in each area. It's altogether based on your overall needs, but the way they're changing it now, someone who has lots of need in one area will qualify, but people who have multiple needs over multiple areas will then be disqualified from getting it.
Well, yeah, if you find day-to-day activities slightly harder than your average person, but you don't need severe help in any one particular area, this all makes sense. Yeah, that's probably not bad policy. I mean, as much as everyone's having a go at Labour for this, it's all because of popular electoral politics. That's why. If we're being absolutely fair here, it's kind of been a dream to cut benefits for some time for an awful lot of us.
But PIP has nothing to do with work. The only connection between PIP and work is that having PIP helps disabled people get into work.
This is an argument that I don't know how much I entirely buy. If you're very disabled and it means that you can afford a wheelchair, I could probably understand it. However, from anecdotes, and a lot of people have these anecdotes, and things you see on TikTok, things you see on Twitter, it appears a lot of people are basically doing this sort of stuff for free money and will then do cash-in-hand jobs to, top up their income to get to a point where they're, top half of earners by not getting into the official workforce. But the thing is, they could be doing that cash-in-hand stuff without the benefits, which would then not put them in the top half of earners, because the only reason they're doing that is frankly because of money that's been taken off workers, businesses, and well, the rich that they keep going on about as well. A lot of people feel very uncouth saying, basically they feel selfish saying things like this. I'm kind of past that, because there's just absolutely no way that more people below the age of 40 should be on benefits than people over the age of 40. That just doesn't make any sense.
So that is a completely fallacious argument, and that is something that we've noticed in all the interviews from ministers and MPs who are supporting the cuts, is that every time they talk about PIP, after about 5 seconds, they suddenly start talking about getting people back into work.
Well, yeah, you end up making tax revenue via people working. That makes a lot of sense. I can understand why they want that. And I'm not being funny, but with my experience with PIP as well, having a job tends to give them evidence that you're not disabled. That is also something on top of that. So it's another reason to, well, not mention to PIP that you work. No, you can't be that disabled. You use a keyboard half the day. All right, okay, fair enough.
Cutting PIP will increase the number of people who aren't able to work, because PIP helps people to be in work.
Again, another thing I just find quite interesting from people who make these arguments is that they're usually quite good at giving examples of the claims they're making, but when it comes specifically to this, it helps people get into work, I never really see examples of it. And it frankly just all seems like cope and seethe to try and effectively batten down anyone's complaints. But the fact of the matter is that, there are some people I know on PIP who have jobs, others I know who are on PIP because, frankly, they don't want a job. And typically these are people who are a few years away from retirement and are finding it difficult to work anymore. Again, totally reasonable. Do not mind giving, people in their 60s with arthritis some money for help on that because of the poor position that they're in. But, these younger people who, have autism to some degree, maybe can't walk as far as your average person because, they need a crutch or something. These don't seem like reasons to be on PIP. You can do majority of the jobs that we have today, given that majority of jobs are at a desk on a keyboard. You can call me unsympathetic and all that, but at this point, I'm the one of the people bringing in the money for this, so I think I should have more of a say.
I mean, our members more and more now, sadly, are sitting both sides of the desk. So thousands of our members claim the benefits that they administer. Thousands of our members claim PIP. Thousands of our members claim universal credit because they're not paid enough by the government in their day job.
How are you getting universal credit when... I thought the whole point of universal credit was that it was an out-of-work benefit. How are your members getting universal credit if they need a job? I mean, again, it's all just reminding me of the whole debate with the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. They already are a massive net beneficiary of benefits largely due to the state pension, plus an awful lot of them are in family homes when their families are out and they can probably afford a little one-bedroom bungalow, things like that. But then when the winter fuel payment was taken off them, you had the Tory campaign of, look at all these poor people with Rolex watches and lamps that cost about 50 grand. Look at them, they're worried about freezing to death. And, we've got through winter now, and there wasn't this mass death of old people dying from the cold. I can imagine a similar thing is going to happen, and I think the more things like this happen, the easier it will be to effectively deal with the benefit system. Because it is quite clear that people just want free money, and it doesn't really go beyond that.
Make it a hostile environment for those who use our services, and incidents will flare up. There's no doubt about it. We're already seeing it. But, safety is a real issue for our members and our security guards in G4S right now, which is why we're in dispute.
There's a safety issue for your security guards that have obviously been hired out from G4S. From the people who hand out benefits to disabled people. I kind of have to ask this. What safety threats? I mean, again, this happens every time. All you get is, do you not have any compassion? These people need money. And as someone over the past couple of years who has, bought a house, made an awful lot of sacrifices and things like that, you kind of just end up saying, I'm kind of fed up of making these sacrifices. When I'm the one that's allowing for this money to be given to you, I would happily vote for them to go, but unfortunately, it's all too easy to make the claim that that's going to kill people. And really, from the examples that we've gone through this video, there's not really many that could have been avoided if the family actually pulled their socks up and actually did something for those disabled people.
With that as well. And this is going to make things worse because people will get desperate. Let's be clear about this. This will not help people. They will get desperate, and therefore they will come to quite rightly, understandably, to the department and say, this isn't helping us, we demand better.
Is that your safety concern? Disabled people going to your offices and saying, I want more money? Is that a safety concern for you, really? Yeah, man, I want more free stuff too, but I know it's not going to happen, so I just work harder. That's fine to try and push forward. Again, it's almost impressive that Labour are going down that route and basically nobody believes it. All the disabled people think they all just want them dead. Everyone else just thinks, well, your cuts aren't really going that far, though.
They are just ignoring the evidence. And when they tell you the benefit spending is spiralling, they are lying. They are literally lying. We have the evidence. Disability benefits, yes, they have risen.
Absolutely nuts that he's just guardianed himself. Oh, they're lying when they're saying it's spiralling. Oh yeah, benefits are going up though, that's true. But no, they're lying. They're not. It's quite funny, before the election I said, oh, Labour won't be too bad on the economy because of all the attacks they've done. Obviously the first 6 months have been pretty woeful, but now they're actually trying to balance the budget to some degree. And it's got to say, that is appreciated, but they're going the complete wrong way for it. The issue with austerity isn't the spending cuts. The spending cuts are fine. The problem, really, is that you are putting tax on productive people, which disincentivises productivity. That's what slows down your economy, but everyone thinks it's the spending side. Nope. We had barely any state welfare back in the Victorian period, when you had the largest increase in living standards ever. I would personally love to go through a period of massively increasing living standards.
But the proportion of GDP taken up by social security spending has not spiraled. It is stable.
Technically true, but the problem is that the forecast is for it to spiral, and they are absolutely trying to avoid that because they want the headroom back and they want to actually be able to spend money to give Chagos away to Mauritius. So, I mean, yeah, as I say, technically true, it has been stable. We're looking to the future, though, and the forecast ain't great. Again, you got to bear in mind that 1 in 5 cars last year, new cars that were purchased, were on the mobility scheme, which is an offshoot of PIP. Again, it is absolutely fair to do something about all of this. It's madness, and has the complete wrong incentives for society. It incentivises people to try and get some sort of medical label and then try and get money off that. And autism seems to be the go-to way to do it.
Disabled people always get scapegoated for cuts. It's just as simple as that. It dates back, there's a cycle. It dates back to the early 1990s and then the 2000s and then the post-2010 years, the austerity years.
Yeah, victim. I get it, you're all victims. Anyway, 1 in 5 new purchase cars last year, held up by the mobility scheme. It's basically kept the electric vehicle market going in Britain. Yeah, call it scapegoating. Where's my free car?
When does cutting support or investment ever grow anything?
I'm sorry, this isn't investment, this is people getting free money. That's not what investment is. And cutting support, well, as everyone keeps saying, oh, it's nothing to do with being in work or not. Oh, so it's not support for work or investment. No, the idea of PIP is to give the type of people who are severely disabled and can barely work on their own, function on their own, to give them a little bit of a boost in income because they're either going to find it basically impossible to get a job that's going to pay well, or at least find it very difficult. And people are completely fine with doing that. We do not want to see disabled people dying on the streets. The problem is that most people here complaining about this, while some of them are in wheelchairs and some of them can't walk, as everyone has noticed at this point, an awful lot of jobs require you to be able to sit at a desk and type. Lady with no arms? Fair enough. That's probably not reasonable. All these people able to move their own wheelchairs with their own arms and hands? Probably a bit more reasonable.
Talking about business and the economy, you don't cut funds for a business to enable it to grow. You invest in it. This is about investing in deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people in the UK.
Again, it's a play on language here. Investment in them. What's the return on investment on them? Well, it's never really been quantified or qualified, so I don't really know there. But there are an awful lot of people who will know autistic people who can go into a job. But there are also autistic people that absolutely can't go into a job if they're non-verbal, say. These types of people will easily get 4 points in a certain categories for PIP. They are the people that need help. It just seems perfectly reasonable to me. I want to get to a point where barely anyone is getting free money, but the people that genuinely need the free money are getting it. That's what an awful lot of people want, and you've played your cards too hard for too long, and I'm fed up of hearing it. The worst thing you hear is people online being keyboard warriors all day, defending stuff like this. If you can be on Twitter all day trying to make your arguments to defend this, you can absolutely get a job in pretty much any office. That's a lot of people's take on this at the end of the day. People really do not like the idea of fraud. It's something both my parents have complained about for as long as I can remember. The typical situation of these lazy people on benefits who hardly lift a finger to work a day in their life. My sister had someone in her class who basically told the teacher that was his plan, to be on benefits all his life because he had no ambition. There's plenty of anecdotes that I and friends have of people that are like this. People are fed up with it, and PIP seems to be a rather large way of, defrauding the government and the taxpayer of money. And yeah, as much as the drum is being banged for this, it's one of those things that a lot of people are kind of keeping quiet on because they'd rather see this go but don't want to be called terrible for it. Me though, I don't care.
So on what planet does cutting that support and taking away what social security we have, security being the key word, drive us into work?
Well, if you want more security, you get a better job. That's how everyone else has to work, and, well, if you don't need direct help for activities that you do, why would you need personal independence claimants? Or payments, sorry. That's the question that everyone's asking. Anyway, this video was pretty much exactly what I'd expect from a protest like this. People are going to be losing out on money, and they're deplored by it. I understand why. People like getting money. But I think with that, I will leave it there. So, videos out as and when I can make them. Of course, there will be a Tosh Talks next Tuesday. The topic will be put out in a poll in the Discord, so do join the Worcester Club down below. If you want to help out the channel, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. You can also give me money via super thanks, super chats, and becoming a member. And I thank absolutely everyone who does donate money to the channel. But with that, that's everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.